Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR365.com and PodWeather.com with the latest on the tropics. We do have a tropical storm out there, and it is looking rather ill-defined at the moment, but you wouldn't know that looking at the satellite imagery. Here's the satellite imagery of the Atlantic Basin, and there is Tropical Storm Erica sitting right there, and you can see it's bursting pretty well, but it's not showing a very well circulation underneath that ball of convection. And it is far enough to the south now to where it does look like it will make landfall in the northern islands. From there, there are scenarios up the yin-yang whether or not this thing continues over the islands and weakens, moves just north and strengthens, or ends up moving a lot further north. There's a lot of uncertainty with it. But let's take a look at the latest on Tropical Storm Erica as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time from the National Hurricane Center. And it was at 16.5 north, 60.4 west. Winds were 40 gusting to 50, so it's weakened about 20 miles an hour since last night. It's moving straight west at 10, no longer to the west-northwest. And the center is more, not so much relocated as a mean center. We got a lot of different lows, so it's just kind of the best guess on where a center would be. And that pressure is 1,008 millibars, expected to remain a tropical storm, maybe get a little stronger, and then as Saturday and Sunday roll around, begin to get into an area of increased wind shear and weaken to a depression. Now, keep in mind, if this heads further south, as we've seen with Debbie in 2000 and Chris in 2006 time and time again, this thing could get caught up over Hispaniola and never come back, which is what we hope, because if it does come back down the road here, there's always the opportunity that as it gets close to land, it could really crank up. And remember, Katrina back in 2005 entered here as a wave and was a strong Category 1 hurricane by the time it hit Florida just 2 or 3 days later. So this area here near the Gulf Stream, September, you always have to watch very carefully. Now, the latest satellite imagery, the visible satellite imagery that is of Erica, you see two swirls. The first swirl is right here, moving over the islands here, and you might think, wow, that's the center, it's entering the Caribbean, but that is not the center. The new center is somewhere in here, but again, it's very disorganized. It's almost irrelevant. Heavy rainfall and gusty winds is going to be what people are worried about in the area of the islands here, because even if this were to weaken to a tropical wave and come through, it would have pretty much the same impact as a 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm would. Now, here's the model guidance, and you can see they've shifted west. We have no real indication that this thing's going to gain a lot of latitude. The only way it might do that is if it strengthens really quick into a strong hurricane, but that seems unlikely at this point. The likelihood is that it will just continue west and then west-northwest, generally towards the Bahamas and Florida. Now, the ship's guidance does indicate that it will be weak, very weak, but towards the end makes it a hurricane again and starts to strengthen it. So we do have to worry about the prospect that if the ship's model's right, this thing could be a strengthening hurricane in the Bahamas, but right now we don't see any real indication that will be the case with this. Now, the upper level winds, here's the problem. You have wind shear cutting right through the top of it, and this map doesn't even get into it. It's getting undercut, much like Hurricane Francis did. I keep bringing up Francis because there are similarities. In this case, it's when Francis was in the Bahamas, and everything looked favorable for strengthening, and then it got undercut and ended up weakening from 145 to 105, which saved the coast of Florida from a storm worse than they could have imagined. However, the upper-level anticyclone here is sitting over the southern Windward Islands. So instead of having the flow over the top of the circulation ventilating it, it's to the south of the circulation shearing it. And this is similar to what happened to Hurricane Gustav last year when it got north of Cuba. The anticyclone was displaced and that sent southerly wind shear into it. However, this is a little bit worse than that. Gustav was able to be a strong hurricane. This may never become a hurricane if it gets sheared apart. We just don't know at this point in time. The water temperatures get warmer and warmer as you get to the Bahamas here, so if this thing does build an inner core and become a hurricane and get under a bit more favorable environment by the time it reaches the Bahamas, we could be in for a good burst of intensification. But it needs to get there first. That is the main key. Now, taking a look off Africa, we had one tropical wave, and it's no longer looking that good. But this monster moving off, this could be a problem. This is going to be Fred, potentially, and here's the infrared satellite imagery. It has a good low pressure with it, has good banding features trying to flow out from the wave, and as it exits here good to the south, it is early September. It is that time of year. This one fizzled. This one could be the real deal. Where it goes in the long run, it probably is going to head more towards out to sea, but it's so far out there that you want to watch every wave very, very carefully indeed. Now, we still have Hurricane Jimena out there. It's down to 100 miles an hour as a Cat 2, moving north-northwest now at 12, 973 millibars. It's at 25.2, 112.2. And it is sitting right there. It's expected to weaken, scrape up the Baja, and then turn westerly. But let me tell you guys something. This thing means business. Take a look at this visible satellite imagery. There it is. It's inland. It's starting to make that curve, but it is inland over the Baja, and they're just getting hammered there. In the eye wall, you could have winds gusting well into the hundreds with those sustained 100-mile-an-hour winds as the hurricane continues to pull in. But yeah, Hurricane Jimena making landfall, a far cry from the Category 4 or 5 it was just a few days ago, but still something to be concerned about, no doubt. So in the final analysis, there on the edge of your screen is Erika moving into view here. It is expected to move like this, generally in that direction, and be very weak and ill-defined. Some models say, hey, this thing might just open to a wave coming to the Caribbean, or it might get caught up over the Antilles here, the Greater Antilles, and die out. Or it might head further north. That kind of gives you a cone of uncertainty there, and the green line that I draw here is probably right up in the middle of that cone, which is where the hurricane center is. The ship's model says very weak, and then slowly starting to strengthen, and then strengthening a little bit more quickly as it gets towards the Bahamas here. If you're in Florida, it's looking a lot more likely to take a westerly track towards Florida now than it was before. So you have to keep an eye on it. Anything can really happen with this system. You can see there's Hurricane Jimena going to continue to scrape the Baja, move back out over water, and weaken. And we do have another area of showers here in the eastern Pacific. Could this be Linda? Well, we don't know yet. We're going to wait and see on that as it moves on off towards the west. It should probably stay away from land. But that'll do it this time for the tropics. I'm Mike Naso. Stay tuned to podweather.com.